Welcome to Ain't Life Great four-wheel drive webcast. Today I'd like to discuss my experiences with the Cooper line of all-terrain tires, specifically the ATP. Now back in 2014 when I was looking to replace the piece of junk P-rated, passenger-rated SUV tires that came on this Discovery 2 when I purchased it, the Cooper Discover was at the top of my list. And the reason for that is at the time they were starting to receive all sorts of editor choice awards and value awards on multiple four-wheel drive magazines and websites. And I decided, man, they're getting good reviews. And when I pulled up the pricing on Discount Tire's website, they were a bargain. In fact, I could outfit this vehicle out the door, all the fees and processing for around $600 or just under $600. My truck was closer to $800. It had a 33-inch tire, which was still significantly cheaper than going with any of the other brands. Now, when I discuss these tires, I am specifically talking about the light-duty truck tire. Now, for most of you, that makes sense, as the light-duty truck tire has a stronger sidewall. But some of you might think, hey, we can go the P-rated, the passenger-rated tires, and save even more money, and you'd get the same handling. Well, you know that's true. You're just sacrificing sidewall strength. But I've found in the type of terrain I traverse in Utah and Colorado, the biggest culprit to tire failures is a sidewall tear, usually from a rock or a tree branch. Now, when I've gone with light terrain tires, my typical mode of failure is a nail in the tire, which happens more on the highway than it does off-road. So for me, it's a no-brainer. I always go light truck tires. Now, at the time I purchased these Cooper ATPs, these particular tires, they weren't even on Cooper's website. I had to look at the AT3 in order to find the specifications for this tire. And I compared these tires to an AT3 of that vintage, and they looked identical except for the naming across the side. I'm assuming that that's because Cooper was licensing the ATP directly to Discount Tire and selling the AT3 to other vendors. Now, this isn't uncommon for a tire vendor to exclusively offer a specific tire to a certain vendor. That way, when they try to price match, you can't. And so you kind of sneakily get around that benefit. Now, I don't know if that's what Cooper and Discount had going on, but nowadays it really doesn't matter anymore because the ATP is its own tire. And the AT3 has kind of gone upscale. There's now the Cooper AT3 XL and the Cooper AT3 XLT. Now, from what I can see, as is kind of the trend nowadays, they've added more aggressive sidewall lugs. The XL has a basic, the ATP has these kind of surfing waves, which is more or less a design. The XL has, a minor sidewall lug across the side, and the XLT is more aggressive. And so that's the difference. Now, I don't have any of the newer ones to compare. These are my oldest pair. Again, I purchased in 2014, and I have over 30,000, close to 40,000 miles on these tires. I haven't driven any of the new ones to experience them, but the tread pattern on the pictures are about the same. The sidewall lugs will probably give you some more performance, and we'll discuss that as we go. But needless to say, the Cooper ATP is apparently the entry-level all-terrain tire from Cooper Tires right now. Cooper Tires rates the dry performance of these tires on all tiers as maximum, whatever that means. Each vendor rates their own way. But I can say I have had no problems with these on dry pavement. At the same time, I really don't have any off-road vehicle with a ton of torque, and none of my four-wheel drives are exceptional in the handling department. I do live in an area with a lot of deer. As far as emergency braking is concerned, I don't get any fishtailing or weird handling when I do an emergency brake test on these. They hold really well. The ABS can pick up. They hold traction. I just basically have no complaints on the dry performance of the Cooper AT line. Now, wet performance. Now, the AT3 line, the XL and the XLT, Cooper rates as maximum in the wet weather traction tier, while the ATP is rated a little bit less. Now, I'm not sure if that's just because of the sidewall lugs or if they're using a different rubber compound. As far as wet weather is concerned, I've never had an issue with these in the rain. Snow, these are very good. Again, I have purchased 4 sets of these. One was, I put them on the Discovery, And compared to the all-season Michelins I had, I noticed no real difference in winter performance. Now, when I mounted this set on my Hummer H2, it had, I can't remember the brands, but they were kind of an all-terrain. And in the winter, my wife was sliding around, especially on slushy. She'd come to a stop and the brakes would lock up, the tires would lock up, and we would skid to a stop. It was kind of fun, but dangerous at the same time. When we put the Coopers on, that seemed to go away. It was a significant increase in snow performance. When we stuck them on the Suburban, I really noticed no difference compared to what we had had on before. And my 3/4 ton truck had the all-season or all-weather tires that Chevy put on, and I really can't remember what they were. Maybe they were a Firestone, I can't remember. But those were very good. I went through a couple winters with those. They were a street bias tires. These are all-terrain for off-road. I noticed no detriment to the snow handling with the Coopers compared to the street bias tires that GMC put on my truck originally. So I would say these are fairly decent in the snow. I would have no concerns with these if you lived in an area where snowstorm and ice and terrain like that. Tread wear. Now, it should be noted that currently the Cooper XL and the XLT line have a 60,000 mile warranty. I looked at the papers on mine, and my ATPs back in 2014 came with a 50,000 mile warranty. Now, I'm pushing 40,000 miles right now. On this particular vehicle, I have, for most intents and purposes, people would say I've abused it. I think I will lightly, but let's just say those 30,000 miles are pretty much back and forth to the trail, plus off-roading, plus spinning to get the traction control going. There's a lot of braking going on here. These tires have been used. And I'm pushing 40,000 miles now, and I'm looking at the tread depth, and I've got just under maybe a half an inch left, and the wear is fairly even. The shoulders are kind of wearing on the side on mine. That may be more due to alignment. We'll talk about that later. The other vehicles I've had, I tend to sell vehicles quite a bit because I like playing and building with different makes and models. So the Suburban and the Hummer, I essentially sold them with new tires, so I can't really comment on that. I'm getting some scrapes on these wave lugs. The truck is essentially brand new. I've got about 10,000 miles on them, and they look fairly new. So I would say, yeah, these tires are gonna hold up to their wear ratings like a lot of good, high quality all-terrains do. But that brings us to probably the biggest negative to the Cooper ATP style tires, and that is tire noise. And the noise rating of these tires is rated about the same, I believe, between the XL, XLT, and the ATP. It's not quite maximum, a little bit above half is what Cooper rates it. When you install these for the first time, they're really quiet. And I think a lot of the reviewers, they're saying, hey, these are a good, quiet all-terrain, they're a bargain, they work well, for the price per dollar, they can't be beat. And I would say that is true. But around 10,000 to 20,000 miles, depending on vehicle, in the Disco, maybe because the Disco is louder, I noticed it at about 20. In the truck, I noticed it about 10. In the Suburban and the Hummer, it was about 10 to 15,000 also. You get that whoa, 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 whoa of the whine of the tires. You start wondering, oh no, do I have a wheel bearing going out? And it's coming from the front. Usually, depending on where you're driving, it'll be the right front, left front. Check the wheel bearings, that looks fine. The tires look good, and you just kind of roll with it, I guess. That's what I did. And I kind of attributed it to the tires when it started happening on the Suburban. And it was a lot quieter on the Suburban than the Discovery, had less miles on it also. And then when the Hummer got some miles under its belt, it started to make some noise too. And I'm thinking, okay, it's got to be the tires. Well, I think we figured out what the problem was. And it happened when we came back from Colorado with the Discovery 2, and my cousin looks at it and goes, there's something wrong with your alignment. All four of your tires, looking at the dust pattern, you've got tread in the middle, but every other lug is skipped and it's black. And it was really odd, and I thought maybe it's a braking thing, and started researching that a bit. I bought new shocks for the Discovery, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. Well, around that time, I had the tires on the truck, and the whump whump started coming Started looking at the truck, and I noticed once going through a dirt area, and the truck again was new, that every other shoulder lug was worn on the front. And I did my tire rotation, and I've got some photos I'll show of how my fronts look, which used to be on the back. And you can see that tire patch is nice and even. But then you look at the backs, and you can see that alternating tread pattern very, very clearly on the truck. And I am thinking that is the culprit, is these wear. It looks like for the off-road performance, one of these lugs kind of goes up one way and the other kind of goes down the other way. So they kind of like, I don't know, they cup or something. You can feel it with your hand, up, down, up, down, up, down. I think that is where the noise is coming from. But for right now, the Cooper ATPs expect some droning tire noise, not loud, but just, typical droning noise when you hit that 10 to 20,000 mile range on your tires. So that's just the biggest negative to these tires, quite frankly. Now for off-road performance, they both give these excellent off-road ratings. The AT3 XL and the XLT are obviously higher because of the sidewall lugs, and that's the way I guess the marketing is going. Let's talk about the rocks, slick rock, and Moab type terrain. These work really well. For the weight of this vehicle, I really wanted a load range C or even a D. The E's are really stiff. I mean, these are 1-ton truck tires really. So when I get them down to about 20 PSI, I don't get as much flex as I would like, but it's okay. That's all that was offered at the time. And I would rather have the sidewall strength than to go to a P-rated tire, which would give me more conformity over the rocks, but at the expense of the strength of the sidewall. What I really like on these tires is, I'll show you some video clips and you'll see these tires skidding and you'll say, well, maybe they're a piece of junk. You're not getting any traction. Well, that's the low traction wheel, and that's the way the Discovery 2's traction control works. It gets the ABS detector detects that slippage, and this is an early version. Newer vehicles will detect it sooner and engage the traction control quicker. This is not a very aggressive traction control. It takes quite a bit of slip to get it to go. But what you'll notice is when it slips, the tire that does have the traction, which isn't moving and is now receiving all of the traction, it can stay on its line as I go up and over. As I maneuver the spine, specifically going down Devil's Racetrack in the rain, I was worried that my tire would slip off the rocks that I was moving, despite being spotted very well, especially when the low traction tire was spinning and you have that torque transfer. It tends, right-hand rule, it tends to shift the vehicle over off the line, and we really didn't want it on that spine. And these tires performed remarkably in that aspect. You can see it where we were trying to maintain the line in Eagle Canyon, and my first video that you have may seen is comparing the vehicles. I had these tires on this vehicle at that time, and I maintained a straight line. And that is very important for traction control and off-road performance when using a traction control vehicle. On the flip side, the tires which came with my brother-in-law's WK2 Grand Cherokee, you may have saw our review of that, those stock tires weren't very good, and it is almost not fair to Jeep, although Jeep's the one that decided to put them on. When we were going up Miller Hill, up American Fork Canyon, we were on the right line, and as soon as torque transferred, you had that slip to the right. You can see it in the video. It slipped right off, even though the Blizzak tires I had on my Range Rover went right up, and they weren't very good. Is that form, dirt, rocks, gravel, these tires perform very well. I've had no problems with them. Now on the mud, I don't do a lot of mud driving or sand, and so in the mud and the sand, I don't think I'm really qualified to discuss their performance, because quite frankly, I'll be honest, I'm not a great sand and mud driver. So if you have experience of the Cooper line in sand and mud, write your experiences in the comment below, because I'd like to hear it too. A couple days before our trip through Eagle Canyon, the water came through and flash flooded through that canyon. We'll show you a shot of my father-in-law's Jeep Liberty driving across the wash, and if you look at the edges, you can see how high that water got during the flash flood. And his Liberty was actually on Cooper AT3s also, and so we got to compare those tires back and forth. Anyway, there was a lot of water there, and it was really muddy. And the first day we went to try to go to Eagle Canyon, I just got in that muddy slop gloop that you get in the San Rafael swell if it rains, and I was thrown off the road. I mean, slid off, thrown off the road. But I didn't spin out. I was able to maintain control. I just lost traction because of the mud and the clay that was there and slid off the embankment. And I was able to get out without shovels or anything, so that's a testament to the tires. But would I have even slid off anyway if I had better tires? I don't know. But we were still running, you know, probably too high of PSI at the time. We decided to turn around and wait for conditions to improve. Now on the Hummer H3, we took it to the Winter Jamboree and we had to go up this huge sand dune. And I made it 3/4 of the way to the top and got stuck. And I was able to back out without traction mats or any of that. And I was able to control my back out and then drive out another way. And so there was that, but we didn't make it up to the top. Now, there were a lot of other vehicles, some heavily modified, which didn't make it to the top either. So was that a fault of the tire or a fault of me just not being a very good sand and mud driver? I think it's fair to say it could be either one. So I'm a little off on that, but as far as rocks, rock crawling, they're an excellent off-road tire. So there it is, my thoughts on the Cooper Discover AT line, particularly a long-term test of the ATP style all-terrain tire. Would I hesitate to buy a 5th set? No. Would I spend a little bit more to keep the tires quiet? Well, I kind of did. I'm testing the KO2s now and the ATXs. We'll see if the premium I spent on those tires are worth it. So if you enjoyed this review, please like, comment, subscribe. That's the best thing you can do to help us out. And when I get 10, 20, 30,000 miles on the KO2s and the ATXs, I'll do reviews on them and we'll compare them back and forth. So happy wheeling and hope to see you on the trail. Thank you.